Hi, Jasmine, can you hear me?
I don't know if I don't think I got the time wrong.
Maybe it's 5.
I don't know. She'll answer now because she's
Okay,
online. Just hold on for me.
sure.
The PowerPoint is quickly loading.
Okay.
Can you see my screen?
I can, Jasmine.
All right. Let's start. Over to you, Sicelo.
All right, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and particularly to the Bangladesh community. Thank you for giving me this opportunity this evening or this afternoon in South Africa to present to you. If I don't have my times mistaken, I believe it's 8:30 or 8 o'clock p.m. That side. So good evening to you. My name is Sicelo Bhengu, and our topic this evening is the journey to leadership. And in discussing this topic, we've got some objectives here and success criteria. Today, hopefully, after this session, you'll be able to define qualities of an effective leader, understand potential challenges of educational leaders, because believe you me, those challenges are there. And I'm hoping that during this session, we'll be able to explore and chat about some of these challenges to prepare any young people or even old people that are looking into becoming educational leaders. In the future, we are hoping that after the session, you'll be able to identify some personal leadership qualities. I'm going to use this session to also talk about me and my journey in order to make some points clearer and for you to understand better on some points that we're going to be discussing and talking about. And then hopefully in the future, you'll be also able to empower others to become better leaders. I think that's a very important point that I'll discuss later on. But when we lead, we don't just lead for ourselves, we lead to empower others as well. Hopefully we'll be able to construct an action plan for potential leadership in your career as well by looking at short-term and long-term goals and distinguishing between the two, and then explore pathways for implementing leadership. So, who am I? I'm Sicelo Bhengu. As I've said previously, I was born and bred in a township called Umlazi in South Africa. Growing up, I was exposed, particularly when I was in high school, I was exposed to two parts of South Africa. One, the poor community, and then the other one was the affluent community. And I think, when I went home in the afternoon back to my township, which was at that time poverty stricken, and then going to school in an affluent community, it built something in me. I think it gave me the opportunity and platform to see both sides of our country, and that instilled something in me, which I'm going to discuss later on in this session, which is quite relevant to my leadership. I matriculated at a school called Durban High School. I was quite privileged, and I use the word privileged very carefully, particularly in the South African context, to go to a school which was a very good school back then and even today. So my parents sacrificed a lot to give me a good education, and I'm ever so grateful because of that. I then talk about the early signs of leadership, of my leadership potential. And there I look at myself as the mayor of the Durban Youth Council when I was in grade 11, grade 12. I was elected as the mayor of the Durban Youth Council, which was a prestigious position, particularly for affluent schools in the greater part of Durban. And I was given the opportunity there to lead my peers and to go out into the community and uplift other people as well. And then the other leadership quality where I identified in myself in having leadership potential was when I was elected or appointed the deputy head prefect of my school. My school had an enrollment of 1,200 boys, and to have been appointed or elected as a deputy head prefect was quite a prestigious achievement. And I think those two positions basically just are two positions that showed me back in the days when I was still very young that I've got some leadership potential, which I then worked very hard at polishing, at mastering going into my career. So what I would like to talk to next is my career journey, and this is not based on me, putting it out there what I've done, or for lack of a better word, showing off what I've done, but it's basically to give you some context of who I am and the journey that I've traveled thus far in my career. So I'm going to be very quick with this because this is not the intention of this talk. This is just a sideline to give context. I went into law school after my matric, and I did a legal studies and history degree. I then had the opportunity of doing my internship at a school called Hilton College, and that was an education internship where I was put in the classroom to teach as an intern and also coach sports. In that 2 years, it's where I fell in love with teaching. I was convinced at that point in time that this is what I want to do for the greater part of my life. So after my internship and graduating as a teacher, I then went into my first position as a full-time teacher at Creston College, where I taught there for 3 years. It was quite interesting. I taught English to first language speakers. What an experience that was for me. And I think that experience also inculcated something in me going forward, which I'll chat to you about later on in this session. Creston College was in a small town called Potchefstroom, and this young man who was quite ambitious and wanted so much more in life, I decided to go to the City of Gold, is what we call it here in South Africa. And that's basically a city where there's opportunity, where young people go to try and find greener pastures, to try and grow in their respective careers. And I set my foot to Johannesburg as well, where I was appointed first at a school called Summit College. And I taught there for 3 years before moving on to quite an established school in Johannesburg called St. Stephen's College. Thereafter, I was appointed HOD, and this is where my career starts to develop and progress. At Steyn City School, I was the head of department of social sciences, and from there, those experiences then led me to South Downs College, where I was then appointed as the deputy headmaster at an early age of 32. And that, of course, also brought some challenges, which I'm going to speak to you about later on in this session. I'm now currently the headmaster or the principal of a school called Pinnacle College Kailami. It's a private school here in Johannesburg, and this is where I'm going to speak more about my leadership experiences and my journey to leadership to you, and also just pinpoint some of the lessons that I've learned whilst in this role as principal of Pinnacle College Kailami. So in terms of studies, very important to balance the two, particularly if you're in the field of education. I believe in lifelong learning. So as I said earlier on, I did my undergrad degree, and then from there I did my qualification, which is called the PGCE here in South Africa, and that basically qualifies you to become a teacher. I then did my honors degree in leadership and management in education at Wits University. I've just recently completed my master's degree, and I'm now a candidate for a doctoral degree at the University of Pretoria. And then just one achievement I'd like to highlight is I was nominated and listed as the Mail and Guardian Top 200 Young South Africans in 2020. And that for me was an achievement which I will say opened doors for me. I've put something there on this slideshow that says, stay humble to be respected for your achievements. That is critically important as we climb in our leadership journey. Now, I'm going to dive straight into our session this evening, and just talking about leadership and talking about the challenges and talking about the obstacles, the opportunities of leadership. And perhaps the first thing that I'd like to ask, because I'd like to make the session as interactive as I possibly can. And the first question I'd like to ask basically is, what do you see as the qualities of a leader, first and foremost? And the second part to the question is, what kind of obstacles do you foresee in leadership, particularly leadership in schools? So those are my two questions. And if you can probably raise your hand or comment on the section below and give me your suggestions, give me your answers. You know, what is leadership qualities, and what are some of the obstacles that one can experience when they're in a leadership position, particularly in a school. So I'm gonna give you the opportunity to raise your hand or to answer. And share your comments there, please. Okay, I see I've got a very quiet audience this evening. All right, any takers? Going once? Going twice? No takers. Okay, hopefully we'll get more warm as the session goes on. So let me help you there. So some of the obstacles that I have identified in my leadership journey, and again, it's important for me to mention here that I'm going to talk about my journey so that you can relate to some of the things that I talk about here. Oh, I see Asna has actually said something here: empathy, decision-making ability, and purpose-driven. Thank you for that. Those are some of the qualities that are indeed important when we are in leadership positions. I'm going to park those qualities, and I'll discuss it in the next slide because I want to touch on some of those things because they are critically important as a leader. So what's important when you try and overcome obstacles within leadership, and particularly within leadership in schools, is that you need to realize that what is valuable is not easy. So you know, it comes with the notion that in order for you to achieve something, you must put in the effort, you must put in the hard work. Anything that is valuable in life never comes easy to you. So you need to understand that, and keep that thought process, particularly when you are faced with obstacles. The second one, which is very close to my heart, is establishing a psychological balance between it's not meant to be and overcoming challenges through resilience. I think these days, many of us, when we are faced with a challenging task ahead of us and things don't always work out the way we want them to, in the early stages, we say, you know what, things are not working out because it's probably not meant to be. We need to balance the it's not meant to be with sometimes we need to face these challenges in order for us, to appreciate the journey that we are taking and for us to get somewhere. So you always need to try and put it on the back foot that it's not meant to be. But say to yourself, maybe these are the challenges that I'm supposed to be experiencing in order for me to value the achievements, in order for me to value the end goal. So please be mindful of that. What is also important about overcoming obstacles is finding yourselves a mentor or mentors. I've been lucky enough to find myself two types of mentors. The one mentor is a life mentor, and the other mentor is a career mentor. So, what do I mean by that? By a life mentor, I'm looking at someone that is, older than me, who has probably experienced more than I have in terms of life in general. And it's important to go to that person now and again when you're facing obstacles to say, how do I navigate this obstacle? And because they've experienced or they have more experiences than you, they are able to guide and mentor you in the right direction. So it's important to have a life mentor. And then the other one is a career mentor. There is a more specific mentor to your field. So for example, if you're in education, it's important to have a mentor that is also in the education field. So that when you're also faced with challenges and obstacles, you can go to that person and they can guide and mentor you within the field of education. That for me has been a very important one. I was able to find a mentor, same background, same obstacles, same challenges. And because I can relate to that mentor, I was able to be encouraged, to be motivated, to look beyond the obstacles that I faced in my journey to leadership. As a leader, it's important to be able to see beyond the now. You know, when you're faced with obstacles, it's easy for you to look at the now and says, this is hard, I cannot overcome this, I cannot achieve my goals. But you always need to have a visionary mind to look beyond the obstacle to say, this is an obstacle, this is the now, but I know where I'm going and I need to put my eye or focus my eye on the end goal and to where I'm going. So that's critically important as well. I'm often perplexed by this one. You know, if I go to any organization and I ask the stakeholders, be it the students, be it the teachers, be it the parents, and I say, what is the vision of the school? Sometimes, or many of the times, people don't know what the vision of the school is. So my question then is, where are you going as an institution if you don't know what your vision is? Normally, we talk about the vision at the beginning of the year, or we talk about the vision when we are still forming the organization or the institution, and thereafter we forget about the vision. As a leader, it is critically important that you are always reminding the people that are following you or the people that you are leading of what the vision is. We are talking here about the students, we are talking about the parents, we are talking about your staff members as well. Because if you don't know what the vision is, and if the people that you are leading don't know what the vision is, then where are you going as an institution? So please continuously remind the people that you are leading where you are going as a school, where you are going as an institution, so that you're all going in one direction. Because when you're not going in one direction, then you find the risk of pulling in different directions, and then you are compromising success for the school or for the institution. I'm loving the comments that are coming in here and the interaction coming in here. I see here from God Tran, a good leader has good vision, inspiration, strategic and critical thinking. Thank you for that. And then Yassine again is saying, we face many problems in real life leadership. And we're going to deal now with the next slide, which basically is talking exactly to your points, Yasin and Gatran and Asnaha, about the qualities of a leader. So if I go back to Asnaha's comments, she said that empathy is needed, decision-making ability is needed, and you need to be purpose-driven. This is the challenge I'm finding myself with lately as a school leader. For example, if a teacher says to you, I'm not coming to school on Tuesday because I've got a sick child that I need to look after at home, you need to balance that with one, feeling for that teacher as a parent, but also having expectations that they've got work they need to do here at the school. So that plays to what Asnaha is saying. You need to have empathy, and in making your decision, you need to be able to balance the two. And then, obviously, as a leader, you are constantly making decisions every single day. My job as a school leader, more than anything else, is to make decisions every single day. And what is scary is that those decisions are actually setting the tone. Okay, they're actually setting the tone for the future of the school. So decision-making processes are critically important. I've spoken about visionary as one of the qualities of a leader. You also need to be a team player. Just because you are the leader, just because you are, inverted commas, the boss, it doesn't mean that the people that you are leading have no say, have no input. I believe in participatory leadership, which means that allowing the people that are following you to participate in some of the big decisions that you have to make as a leader. This is critically important, okay? Because there are two advantages to this. The one, when people feel that they have been part of a decision, they are likely to support the decision and implement it, okay? And then secondly, the other advantage of allowing others to have input is that when you are making your decision, okay, you've got different thoughts from different people who are particularly on the ground implementing those decisions to give input. So your decision is not just something that you have thought about, but it's something that you have allowed other people to actually contribute. And by all chances, that decision will be the good one because you've allowed others to actually give their input. You need to be inspirational as a leader, all right? Now, this can be looked at in many different ways, but in order for people to follow you, you need to inspire them to follow you. I'm a young leader, and the question here that I received in my previous session was, as a young person, as a school principal, being such a young person, how do more experienced people follow you as a leader? How do older people follow you as a leader? All right. And some of the reasons that they follow me is because I try and inspire them to follow me. Okay. But other things we'll talk about in a moment, things such as respect, okay, which we'll discuss when we're discussing the 3 R's. As a leader, you also need to be strategic. Things are not always black and white. Things are not always fitting in a box. You need to think out of the box sometimes in order for you to lead the people that you are leading or the organization that you are leading. And that is being strategic. All right. And then the other one, you have to be open-minded. In the society that we are living in, okay, we've got people of different religions, different races, different cultures. You need to have an open mind in dealing with situations and making sure that by all means you are accounting for the different people that you are leading. So you need to have an open mind when it comes to leading people. You have to be an effective communicator. Now, people mistaken being an effective communicator to being a good speaker. Being an effective communicator is not necessarily about being a good speaker, using big words, using jargon. It's not necessarily about that, but being a communicator or an effective communicator means that when you are speaking to the people, they understand what you are saying. Okay, it's a two-way stream. Okay, you are saying something, but the people are understanding what you are saying, and with the same intention, with the same tone, and with the same meaning that you want them to understand what you're saying. So that's what we mean by effective communicator, not just being a good speaker. And that is an important one if you are going to be a successful leader. Ethical. I'm not sure about Bangladesh or India, but I know that in South Africa we and maybe not to paint a negative picture, but I've heard of many cases of unethical leadership, of corruption by school leaders. So it's an important one that for leaders, you need to be ethical. You need to make moral decisions. You need to make decisions that are not popular decisions, but decisions that are in the best interests of the people that you are leading. That is very important. So, not popular decisions, but decisions that are in the best interest of the people that you are leading. My rule of thumb when making a decision, an ethical decision, is when I go home, I'm able to sleep at night. That's when I know that I've made the right and ethical decision. So that's an important one. Not always easy to achieve, but critical in achieving. And that also speaks to being an inspirational leader, because your followers and the people that you are leading know that you'll make ethical decisions and decisions which are in the best interest of the people that you are leading as well as the organization. And then we talk about the 3 R's. So that is respect, that is relationship, and that is reality. I'm going to focus on the 2 R's, which is relationship and reality. As a school leader, one of your tasks is to ensure that you are building relationships. So I always speak about the triangle. And the triangle for me is the teacher, the child, and the parent, or the school, the child, and the parent. That is the triangle. And in that triangle, it's important that we always make sure that we solidify or strengthen that triangle. Because at the end of the day, if the parent is not involved in the child's education, okay, then we are missing something there. So we need to constantly build those relationships so that when the child, the parents, and the school form the triangle, then the educational journey for the child is a smooth and successful one. So that is part of your journey or your job as a leader. And then the other one is reality. And perhaps I'm going to ask the audience here to help me explain what we mean by reality when we're talking about the 3 R's. Anyone would like to take a jab at this one? What do we mean by reality when we're talking about the 3 R's? Any volunteers? Reality. When we talk about a leader and reality, what do we mean by that? You can type your answer in the chat section, or you can just raise your hand and just answer. Practical approach. Thank you. That's indeed a good one. A practical approach. And anyone else? All right. While you think about that, I'm going to give you my explanation and understanding of reality. When you lead people, some people have fantastic ideas, but ideas that are not necessarily realistic ideas. And I like to call those ideas fairy tale ideas. The point here is not to being realistic. Thank you, Jeannie. The point here is not to crush people when they come up with these fairy tale ideas, but your role as a leader, okay, is to listen to those ideas, but also use your discretion to say, is this realistic? Is this achievable okay, or it's just a fairy tale idea. And that's what we mean here by reality. You need to have a realistic idea, and you need to be able to assess whether something is realistic or unrealistic, so that you don't give high hopes to people, and that you don't start something that is not achievable. So this is a very important one. You need to make sure that you've got the 3 R's secure: respect, relationship, and reality. I spoke earlier on about being a young leader and how do people, follow you and listen to you. It's important, okay, that when you're a young leader and you're dealing with people that are more experienced or maybe people that are older than you, that you show them respect at all times. Okay, you acknowledge their experience, you acknowledge that they're older than you. But more importantly, you need to always show that you are competent. That's an important one, because when people start to see that you are a competent leader, then it's easy for them to then follow you, and it's easy for them to allow you to lead them in whichever direction you are taking the school or the institution. We're going to go to the next slide, Jasmine. Thank you. So what have been my leadership experiences? So here I'm going to talk to the fact that it's always important that you participate in things that are also outside of your job scope, and I'm going to speak to that later on in the session as well. But I had the opportunity to travel to Germany a few years ago. And I was sitting around a boardroom table with leaders in Germany of very top organizations. And as scared as I was, as intimidated as I was, I learned so many new skills in that meeting. So it's important that you expose yourself to difficult situations, because you never know what you can take from that difficult situation or meeting. And then you also need to understand that there are going to be emotionally difficult times. Don't take those times and think or make them defeat you. Use those times to develop you and to build you as a leader. Because let me tell you something, emotionally difficult times will come when you're a leader. Creating a desire in others to acknowledge you, acknowledging others and being respectful. And as I said earlier on, leading with competence, knowledge, and resilience is critically important as well. And then the last one I'd like to talk about in more detail: teamwork makes the dream work. As a leader, it's important that you are able to delegate. You cannot do everything by yourself. That's why you have a team. That's why you have staff members. Delegate. Trust them to do the job. Sometimes I see leaders, they want to do everything because they don't trust other people to do the job. Remember, when you're doing that, you're also saying to the people that you are leading, I don't trust you, therefore I'm going to do everything. And that's the biggest mistake you can make as a leader. Remember, as a leader, you need to empower other people. When people make mistakes with what you've entrusted in them, it's okay. Let them learn from those mistakes. At the end of the day, you are showing them that you trust them. You are showing them that you want to empower them. But number 3, okay, you're becoming more effective as a leader because you're not doing everything by yourself. When you're doing everything by yourself, you're bound to drop some balls. Okay, so make sure that you don't try and juggle everything by yourself, because you're going to compromise the institution. Make sure that you delegate. That's why we say teamwork makes the dream work. We're going to move on to the next slide. While we're doing that, I see some more contributions here. And Gatran says you need to be flexible as a leader. Oh, you're so right there. You need to be flexible. You'll stand in a staff meeting sometimes thinking that you've got your points all covered, and then one of the staff members raises their hands and throws a curveball. You need to be flexible there. Don't take things personally. Be flexible in terms of dealing with certain situations when you're put on the spot. Entrepreneurship is a quality of a leader. That's 100% correct. I'm a head of school or a principal of a corporate school, which means that there are business elements that I need to know in order for my school to run successfully. All right. So more than the academics, more than the school side of things, I also need to know some of the financial things, because I need to control budgets. And so on and so forth. So entrepreneurship is basically part of school leadership, especially in 2022, especially now when we have schools which we call corporate schools. So thank you for that point, Yassine. And then I'd like to talk about application of leadership traits. So we've spoken about the theory behind leadership. What are the traits in terms of applying leadership? So scenarios and situations where leadership skills have been applied. And I think I want to start with this point. When I was a teacher, there are certain parts of my career where I led. So what I want to talk to you about here is that you don't need a title to be a leader. Okay, that for me is critically important. As a teacher, in whichever corner or whichever department you are in, you can always lead. Don't wait to become a principal before you say, okay, now I'm empowered to lead. You can always lead in whichever position that you are in an institution. And this is what I've done, as a very young teacher, a few years ago or many years ago. I've always found places where I can actually lead. And I'm reminded here of a book that was written by Robin Sharma, if I'm not mistaken, which is entitled Leading Without a Title, or Leadership Without a Title. And I encourage you to get a copy of that book and read that book, because it talks about a person or people in different organizations, not just schools, leading and taking the initiative to lead, even though they're not the CEO, even though they're not the principal or the managing director of that particular school. As deputy headmaster, there are many situations where I learned, leadership. Sometimes you can't learn leadership by reading a book or by listening to leaders. Sometimes, you need to be in there, and there are experiences, practical experiences, which will grow you as a leader. And oh boy, have I learned so many of those in my position as deputy headmaster. Obviously, as head of school, I'm continuously learning there how to deal with people, how to build relationships. Some days are good. Some days I feel, you know what, I can't do this. I'm not a leader. You doubt yourselves, but you need to have the resilience to wake up the next day and push on, because it is a journey. It is a journey. You always need to remember that. I've always loved mentorship, and I spoke about two types of mentors that I've had in my life. Being a mentor for me, I'm also mentor for an organization called the Ellen Gray Orbis Foundation, and being a mentor for me also keeps me in touch with what followers or young people are actually going through, and through that journey or interaction with my mentees, I'm also learning about things that I wouldn't necessarily have known if I wasn't a mentor. And then the last one, which for me is very, very important, as school principals, we need to remind ourselves why we are principals, or why we got into the space of education. It was not to sit in an air-conditioned office, okay? It was for the interests and the development of young people. What I do as a school leader, I sometimes leave my office and I go and visit classrooms to see what the children are doing. I sometimes go during breaks or lunch breaks, and I engage with the students, because I cannot lose touch of what the students are feeling, and thinking as well. So it's critically important that you don't lose touch with the people that you are doing everything you are doing for. Okay, so it's not just about the paperwork, the policies, the parents, the emails. It's about the students. So please take the time as school leaders to interact with the children, to find out where they are, how they're feeling, how they're doing, so that the decision that you are or are making in your air-conditioned office are for the benefit and best interests of the children. Let's move on to the next slide. Yes, please stop me and ask questions if you have any questions while I'm presenting. There will be an opportunity later on for a Q&A, but I'm open to people asking me questions. So we make this an interactive session. A teacher is also a mentor. How? Most certainly. All right. I think when we talk about mentorship, we're not talking about only mentoring adults. Okay, the very children that you are teaching in the classroom, they look at you as a mentor. They look at you as someone. You won't believe how children think of teachers. You guys are special to children. You know, sometimes children worship the ground that you are walking on as a teacher. So your job as a mentor is to guide them. Okay, is to lead them in the right way of life. And I always say this: being a teacher is not just about teaching maths, science, and English. Being a teacher is also teaching children about life skills. Okay, life skills which will enable them to live outside of school. So you need to have the full vision here. Okay, you're not just teaching a child to pass maths at the end of grade 4 or grade 6, but you're teaching the child how they are ought to live when they are finished with school. And that for me is a great teacher. All right. Moving on onto the slideshow, we are looking at networking. All right. What do we mean by networking? You know, it's I say this very, very carefully. You know, who you know is also critically important in order to develop as a person. And I say that very, very positively. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this, it's important for you to build relationships outside your job scope. Get involved in other things which are not necessarily part of your school, because you'll be amazed about the people that you're going to meet who are going to contribute to your life, who are going to give you lessons that you would not have experienced if you had not been exposing yourselves. So networking is very, very important. You know, I'm having this session now with the Bangladesh community. Who knows? Maybe after the session, Yasin and I can collaborate. Okay, and this is part of networking. So it's important that we network. By networking, we are building relationships, not just for ourselves and our selfish reasons, but for the betterment of our education system throughout the globe, throughout society at large. Find out what works globally. You know, I'm always keen when I'm engaging with other people to find out what are the challenges and what are the things that are working in your education space in whichever country that you find yourself in, because I'm able to then take those things that are working and maybe implement them in my school sector to improve my school, and vice versa. You can take something that I've said and you can implement it in your school as well. So it's important that we always are interacting, are networking with each other. Join the global education movement. And I think that's why people like Jasmine have created, you know, sessions like this, the Globally Empowered, for example, because it gives us the opportunity and the platform, okay, to interact with each other so that we learn from each other. And remember, the goal is very clear here. We all have one goal, and that goal, okay, is to improve society, is to improve the education space globally. So we need to learn from each other. We need to use each other's expertise. Where you are falling short, let me assist you. And where I'm falling short, let me allow you to assist me. And that is critically important. As a young person or as a person aspiring to be a leader, you need to build your credibility. You know, I think I'm constantly doing this in my journey as a leader, where I'm building my credibility, joining things like the T4 education space, speaking in platforms such as the Globally Empowered. I'm building my credibility. Find ways to build your credibility. So people, when they hear your name, or when they are told that you are their leader, they actually say, I've heard this person speak on the globally empowered platform. I know that this person is a T4 country ambassador, for example. So it's important to always build credibility to your name as well when you want to be a leader. And then we look at the next one, which is setting goals. And before I go through that, I'm going to just read some of the comments down in the chat section as well. Interaction with students, parents too, 100%. You must not lose touch of what the parents are thinking and feeling. At the end of the day, and I say this very carefully, the parents are the clients because they are taking their children to your school. You need to know what they are thinking. You need to know what they are buying into. You need to know what they want to buy into. And you can never know this unless you are interacting with them constantly. Unless you are constantly solidifying that triangle which I spoke to you about, the learner, the school, and the parent. So thank you for that point, Gatran. Very valuable point indeed. I'm going to talk about setting goals, and I want to distinguish here between short-term versus long-term. It's all good and well for us to have long-term goals. In 5 years, I want to be a school principal, for example, and that's fine, okay? But it's also important that whilst you're thinking about that long-term goal, you also have short-term goals. What do we mean by that? All right. When you spend too much time thinking about the long-term goal, you might get demotivated, you might get discouraged. Okay, so it's important that you also set yourself short-term goals because you achieve those quicker. And by achieving those, you are actually motivating and encouraging yourself to say, yes, I've achieved the short-term goal. I'm ready for the next short-term goal. And all these short-term goals need to build you to get to your long-term goal. So don't always focus on the long-term goal because those long-term goals will discourage you. Okay, in setting the long-term goal, think of how you're going to achieve the long-term goal through short-term goals. That for me is critically important. When I started in education in 2010, the goal for me was always to be a school principal. I got that 12 years down the line. But had I focused on only the long-term goal, I'll probably have been discouraged 2 years into my long-term goal. So it was important for me within the 12 years to put short-term goals as well in order for me to get to my long-term goal. So that's very, very important. And then we look at the next slide, where we talk about the impact and empowering others. This for me speaks to my heart. And I think it speaks to the hearts of many of you in this presentation. Don't just do it for yourself, okay? When you've achieved, or when you are still in your journey to achieving, you need to think about the people behind you. And I like a book by the author, a very successful businessman by the name of Bonang Mohale, a South African businessman. He wrote a book that is entitled Lift as You Rise. And basically what he means by that is as you rise, as you become more and more successful, don't forget to lift those below you. That for me is why we do what we do. That is for me why I do what I do. I need to empower others. I need to develop others. I don't do it for myself. And that's what keeps me going even during those bad days. Okay, inspire others to embrace education with passion and purpose. Now, unfortunately, I'm not sure what the dynamics are in Bangladesh, but in South Africa, I always say that education chooses people or young people, but young people don't choose education. And when I talk about education, I mean teaching. So what normally happens that because of circumstance, people say, you know what, because I failed in this, and that, let me just choose teaching. And that is a big mistake that young people do. So what I'd rather say is you must be the one as the young person that chooses education, because education is a calling. Teaching is a calling. When you choose to do it, then we know for a fact that you're passionate about this thing and you'll fulfill the purpose of this thing You're not just doing it for the paycheck at the end of the month. So please, we need to encourage young people to be the ones choosing education, and we need to inspire brilliant minds as well, to choose education. Jasmine and I were talking about an organization here in South Africa called the JG Fellowship. And basically, the JG Fellowship is an organization that goes out into society and identifies young, brilliant minds and encourages them to choose education or to go into education. And that is brilliant because we need brilliant people. We need young, brilliant people in education. So we need to inspire. We need to become a beacon of light. As a young leader, I would like to think that I've inspired many other young people to say, you know what, you can actually become a principal at a young age. You don't have to wait until you're older or much older. And that for me is inspiring those behind me to say, you know what, let's get into education because there is growth here. We can also become leaders. And that is also me creating a desire in young people to join the field of education. I've spoken a lot about mentorship. And then reaching out beyond your borders and limitations. Challenge yourself. Challenge yourself. When you don't challenge yourself, you run the risk of becoming stagnant and not growing as an individual. Ever so often you need to feel nervous about the day. You need to feel scared about the day, and that's when you know you're challenging yourself. If you're not, it means you're comfortable where you are. And remember, when you're comfortable, you're compromising growth, you're compromising your development. So put yourselves in difficult positions and situations, because that's where you reach beyond your borders and limitations, and that's where you actually grow as a leader. I like the point here. Teaching is the mother of all professions. I couldn't agree more. I'm not being biased here, GD, but I love that point. It is indeed the mother of all professions. And remember, it is a calling. When you're called into the space of education, answer that call, because when you answer that call, that's only when you will teach with passion and purpose. I'm going to end there and probably pass the baton to Jasmine to look at this last slide for us.
Thank you, Sicelo. Every time I listen to you, I get more inspired. I get rejuvenated to lead. And I think it is so important that that happens to us as educators on a daily basis. So our heading here says, enlarge your tent. Let's think about. I want you to think about, where do you see yourself? In South Africa, we ask ourselves the question, where do we see ourselves as African educators or leaders in 5 years? Previously, we had the session held for a South African audience or an African audience, but now we have a Bangladeshi audience, and we also have people from Vietnam here. I see there's a South African online as well. So where do we all see ourselves as African educators or leaders in 5 years? Sicelo has just emphasized the fact that you don't need a title. Teachers are leaders too. They are mentors. Ask yourself, do we acknowledge, then build on our strengths and develop our weaknesses? It's so easy to look at our strengths and forget about our weaknesses. Can you recognize within yourself what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are? How can you build on your strengths? How can you develop your weaknesses? Another question important for us as leaders and educators, do we recognize others' strengths and support them to develop their weaknesses? Okay, lift up as you rise. Do we recognize the strengths of others? That's very important. Sometimes we can be so focused inwards, just looking at where we are as educators. But if you recognize the strengths of others, and support them to develop their weaknesses, you are developing yourself. Another point I want to raise here is, are we spreading some positivity as educators and leaders? Our leaders need hope. I look at, sometimes you have workshops online, offline, and sometimes teachers come together and all they can do is complain about what's happening in. Always spreading some positivity. If you go out into the community, it can be a social event. When people speak to you about their job or your job, what are you giving back? What's your input? Are you happy or are you not happy? Right? The last point is, are we happy with what we put out? Are you happy in your work and about your work? Do you feel you're making a valuable contribution within your school, within your community? And as Sicelo said, the pandemic actually opened doors to global collaboration. Are you making a contribution globally? I don't think in our minds, when we qualified as educators, especially me years ago, that was not so long ago. Anyway, never in my head I have ever thought that I'll be speaking to a global audience. Sicelo himself, he started out, he had opportunities, but you never sometimes put yourself so far ahead of the game. But it's really, really important because the classroom, I foresee that soon we will be having global lessons where students are attending a math lesson on a topic in global classrooms. I can see that happening. It's already happening with global projects. We have students participating in global projects for the Sustainable Development Goals, one topic, about 25 countries sometimes. And now you still have to calculate how many schools within that country are participating in that same project. So enlarge your tents and think about what you can achieve and leave your space, open the borders, and become a true leader. It doesn't even have to be with a title. It can be as a teacher. It can be as a mentor. It can be as a teacher speaking to a parent. It can be you mentoring a student, right? Now we have questions and answers, Q&A. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat. I'm gonna reflect. If you have a question, you may type it. But Gar said we should break long-term goals into attainable steps. I couldn't agree more. Focus on what is at hand to achieve what you want to achieve long-term. Keep your eye on the vision. Keep your eye on the goal, as they say. Without any further ado, I'm going to hand back to Sicelo for the Q&A. If there's no questions, we want to say thank you for your participation today, for coming to listen to Sicelo. I can only see him rising and rising, because when he rises, he lifts up others. And that is so important. If there's no question, we thank you for the session. I don't know if Asnaha is around, but I cannot post the link in.
Hi, Sicelo. Hi, Jasmine. I'm here. Thank you. Thank you so much, Sicelo, for such an empowering presentation. And I really love the way you gave us tips about, the nitty-gritties of leadership, and those will take us long way. So thank you so much, and we are wishing you all the best for the future endeavors. And yes, I have a small token of appreciation for you. Allow me to share the slides. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yes, yes, we can hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Super.
Asna, before you share, there's a question that came in
Yeah.
on my phone.
Yeah, there's a
It's
question.
saying, how do you address or resolve competition and fairness amongst teachers, Sicelo?
Yes, a very good question, and I think what I always try and do is number one, create a positive culture in my institution, but also create a culture of collaboration, and making sure that we are a team, and we're a team inspired to achieve one goal. If you look at a soccer team, you've got a midfielder, you've got a striker, you've got a defender. At the end of the day, that team has one goal. And by continuously sharing that at my staff meetings, that whatever we do, we're collaborating, and we all want to achieve one goal. That, in a way, does eliminate the competition. Of course, we are human beings, and sometimes it's human nature for people to compete with each other. But I always try and say, you know what, competition just means that we're going to pull in different directions. So let's rather collaborate, work together into achieving one goal. And I find that usually does work with my team.
Okay, Yasin, as his question is still on screen.
Thank you,
How
Jasmine.
can we lead an institution into positive leadership at lower level? I'm not quite sure if I understand when you say at lower level, do you mean primary level, Yasin? I think Sicelo is quite capable of answering the question, but I just want to understand the question correctly. How can we lead an institution into positive leadership at lower level? Okay, Sicelo, you want to respond to that?
Jasmine, he has responded. Just now, he has concluded his answer for
Is
this
Yassine
question.
still around to clarify the question?
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure, like you, Jasmine, what we mean by lower level. Are we talking
Yes.
about classroom teacher and students?
You muted.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, I think due to bad network, he moved out. I
It's
can't
okay.
hear him.
Can we we'll answer that question one on one with Yasin. Thank you. So over to you, Asna.
Okay, I can't see Sisalo. I think he moved out due to the bad network. So I just want to thank you, Jasmine, for moderating it so very well. And we have learned many, empowering lessons for leadership. And, like as you said, that leadership, and as Sisalo said, that leadership doesn't need a title. So wherever you are, be a leader of learning, and it will promote your growth, and it will promote the growth of whoever is along with you. So I just want to conclude it by saying thank you to both moderator Ms. Jasmine Frans and also the presenter Sisalo. And I think the slides are visible. Can you see the slides,
Yes.
Jasmine?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Sisalo. This is from all of us for you, and we would love to connect with you again. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for being a great moderator, and we could hear your wise opinion about leadership. And yes, I don't see Sisalo joining in. So thank you, Sisalo, thank you, Jasmine, and thank you all the participants who have joined us. So we have participants from uh, Bangladesh, from Pakistan, from Vietnam, from South Africa, and I think someone from Egypt as well. So such a small, gathering, but we have variety of people joining in from different geographical locations. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining in, and there will be many who will watch the recorded version. So thank you so much, and I have just dropped the link in the chat box for the exit ticket. Fill that ticket and you will get the certificate. Thank you so much, Jasmine. We'll meet again soon.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank you
bye,
so much.
everyone.
Goodbye, everyone. Bye bye.